Just want to welcome everyone who's attending today in person, and also we have a number of people who will be viewing this later on. This is the second installment of our MSc Open House, and in this session, we're going to look at two of the modules in year one, specifically approaches to consciousness and learning through integrative practice, and to help you, see, experience, and understand, what our program is about, what makes it a program that students over the years we've seen some profound changes from within them, and we have members of staff and also alumni and students with us. So to start, let me introduce you to Dr. Kendra Ford, who leads the MSc program, and then Kendra will speak more and also introduce you to other staff members and alumni. So over to you, Kendra.
Thank you, Nick, and welcome everybody. Lovely to see you here, and also for those who are watching the recording of this open house. As Nick mentioned, I'm the academic program leader for the MSc, and our open houses, the one that we're doing today is really focusing a little bit more on year one of the program to really get an understanding of what it's like to engage in some of the foundational content and embodied transformative learning aspects of our program. The way we've set up these open houses is the first one that we had last month, or actually earlier this month, really gave a broad overview of the entire 3 years. And today we're focusing on year one. In May, we'll focus a little bit more on year two and what it's like to engage and be in the material of transpersonal psychology and the applications of the transformative learning that's happening throughout the MSc program. And then in June, we'll kind of circle back and really look at the program as a whole, again, really taking into consideration everything that's already been um, presented within these open houses. And so, um, what I'll say about the program, just really, really briefly, and then I'm going to hand it over to my colleagues, Dr. Ellis Linders, who is module leader for Learning Through Integrative Practice, and Dr. Bethany Butzer, who is module leader for Approaches to Consciousness, two of our foundational um, modules in year one. What I'll say about the program as a whole is the MSc really takes a transformative, embodied learning approach to graduate education. And as you'll likely hear today, and some of what Ellis and Bethany will share, is that just as much as we teach and value a rigorous um, education and support rigorous scholarship and research at the MSc level, we value and embrace personal psychospiritual transformation as part of the MSc. And we really do this in a structured, mindful, transformative approach to education. And it's something that we have been refining and cultivating and developing over many, many years. I think for many of us, decades now. And we really bring in a strong structural research and educational design to our 3 year program, and invite in personal transformation. So I think we have some alumni and a current student here. You'll hear some of that too, also within their experiences. I'm going to hand it over to perhaps maybe Ellis, if you wouldn't mind sharing first, starting us off, and then we'll lead into Bethany talking about approaches to consciousness. So over to you, Ellis.
Thank you. So yes, my name is Alice Linders, and I am module leader for LIP, Learning Through Integrative Practice. Sorry, my dog is go away. Okay, so why is the bit I want to address first. So as Kendra said, we engage in transformative education, and that requires us to have competencies beyond what you might be used to, what you might have been engaging with in more mainstream education. So with competencies, I mean ways of knowing beyond the thinking mind, right? We have all kinds of other capacities, other ways of knowing, intuitive knowing, psychological, emotional knowing, somatic knowing, interpersonal resonance, and of course, spiritual insight as well. So we're trying to bring all of those facets in. And for that, you need a module that helps you gain those skills so that, as a sort of foundation for the program as a whole. So LIP fulfills that function, I would say. That would be my my description of what the purpose of the module. So it's an mainly applied module. Students are asked to choose a practice, to design their own program, and choose a practice in 5 domains. So we have the spiritual, the somatic, the psychological, the interpersonal, and which one have I left out? Intellectual, of course. Sorry. Yes, the intellectual is still part of the program, of course. And then we take a 3-pronged approach, if you like, we triangulate between theoretical knowing, theoretical learning. So you're still having that underpinning with practice, experiential learning. And then the third component is your sort of a critical evaluation of that process, of the transformative process through your own experiential journey that you make. So we kind of frame it within the context of being a researcher of your own experience. Okay, so your kind of sample of one in year one, and that takes you through a process that in a way will then prep you for qualitative research in the end, because of course in year 3 you're going to be doing a research project where you're going to be engaging with deep processes of others, right? And so you need to really be fully embedded in your own self-understanding in order to be able to meet people in that interpersonal space. So I hope that makes sense. If you have questions, do raise your hand. And then, of course, you're going to be supervised. So we have a supervision. You'll be working in small supervision groups with 1 tutor each. So we have 4 tutors on the module, and you will be able to self-reflect, self-evaluate the process. So you're going to be kind of guided in the process. You're not sort of left to do that on your own. And yes, it will help you stay on track as well. So I think that's all I wanted to say. You may have heard of integral practice through the work of Ken Wilber, for instance. It's related. It was kind of our starting point. However, we have really made this process our own. We've been working with this module for 13 years. So every year we kind of evaluate, and Scott will be able to speak on that as well. He's one of our reps as well, where students evaluate the process that they've been in and how they've received the module and how, what worked and what didn't work and so forth. And so we've been building on student feedback and making changes for 13 years now. So what you'll be getting if you joined the course would be 14th year worth of engagement and open inquiry with this very important work. I think that's my 5 minutes. I hope that is comprehensive.
Thank you, Alice. Yes, wonderful. Okay, Bethany, can I hand it over to you to speak about approaches to consciousness?
Sure. Yeah.
Great.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here and to be speaking with you today. Yeah, I'm Bethany, and I'm the module leader for Approaches to Consciousness. And so I'll just say a little bit about this module. And you might notice in my description that this module is in many ways, I think, a nice balance, or I was about to say counterpoint, which I don't think is quite the right word, but a balance to LIP in the first year of the MSc. So I teach the module with 3 other tutors. So I'm the module leader, but we teach as a team of 4. And so we rely on each other's expertise as well. So consciousness is quite a complex topic, and I'm certainly not an expert in all of it, so we co-teach for that reason. And really, the purpose of the module is to explore consciousness from a variety of perspectives. And some of these perspectives we might consider to be more mainstream, because you do need to know what the mainstream theories are in the field of consciousness. But we also go into transpersonal and spiritual approaches to consciousness, which is something that is often left out of most university courses on consciousness. So it's something that makes this module a little bit different from others that you would perhaps take at other universities. And in general, in terms of the topics that are covered, the module is organized into 3 blocks. So the first block starts with the foundational level. So we go over philosophical and metaphysical approaches to consciousness. And in this module, or this block, we focus specifically on how your personal beliefs might influence your theoretical perspectives on consciousness. And what we find often is that our personal beliefs about the nature of reality often impact what we think consciousness is and how we approach consciousness as a topic of study. In the second block, we focus on neuroscientific approaches to consciousness. So we cover many of the leading neuroscientific theories of consciousness, but we also, again, go a step further here where we start looking at neuroscience from a transpersonal psychology or spiritual perspective as well. And when I mention the neuroscience block, sometimes students, potential students or current students, they get a little intimidated. But rest assured, we do not expect you to be a neuroscientist. Many of our MSc students don't have a background in neuroscience at all. So we try to make the material as accessible as we can. You know, full disclosure, some students do find particularly the material on neuroscience a little bit overwhelming, but it is important for you to be aware of it because many of the most prominent theories in the field of consciousness are neuroscientific in nature. And so you need to be aware of what those are. And then finally, the third block focuses on spiritual and mystical approaches to consciousness. And so in this block, we focus on topics like Buddhism, also on how self or no ego might be linked to consciousness. There's also readings on topics such as mediumship, synchronicity, depth psychology. So block 3 is really where we get into the transpersonal aspects of consciousness quite deeply. And so together, the 3 blocks kind of, we think at least, pull together the philosophical underpinnings along with the neuroscience and then the transpersonal and spiritual as well. And so, you know, what I would suggest, at least again from my perspective, is that this is a quite intellectually stimulating module, and it often transforms students' ideas about what consciousness is from a scientific perspective, but also their personal relationship to their own consciousness. And the module can be quite transformational in that way. And sometimes people have questions about the evaluation, so I'll just briefly mention that in terms of the way students are evaluated, there's 3 online discussion forum posts. Those are pretty short, 500 words maximum. There is a group presentation on a topic that's linked to an archive of videos from the Scientific and Medical Network. So if you haven't heard of the Scientific and Medical Network, I recommend looking them up. They have lots of videos on consciousness, spirituality, transpersonal psychology. So there's a group presentation on that. And then there's a final essay as well, which is the main component of the evaluation. And it's a typical type of academic essay, although I would say one way in which it's different from perhaps essays at other universities is that you are encouraged to bring your personal perspective into the essay and link that personal perspective to academic literature. Yeah, so I think that's basically it. I find the course very, as I said, intellectually stimulating and fascinating. It's a very complex topic, but one that I think that many of our students enjoy pursuing. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Bethany. And just to highlight too, both learning through integrative practice and approaches to consciousness start in the fall. So these modules are running concurrently, and learning through integrative practice will continue on throughout the entire academic year. Approaches to consciousness ends with the final essay submission, usually at the beginning of February. And then towards the end of February, the next module starts, which is spiritual psychology. And that will run concurrently with learning through integrative practice. So, both in the first year and the second year, there are 3 distinct modules that are part of the program, but at any given time, you only have 2 modules running concurrently during the academic year. And then, of course, in year 3, you work on your own dedicated research, as Ellis had pointed towards. So at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Francesca Hector, who is also an alumni of the MSc and a current PhD program, PhD student with the Alef Trust. And she's going to introduce the students and alumni who are here who can speak to their experience of going through these modules and perhaps other aspects of being a student with the Alef Trust.
Thanks, Kendra. And just to add that the program really does evolve every year. So it's quite a different shape to how it was when I took the MSc, which wasn't even that many years ago. But all credit to the faculty and the students as well. We're constantly co-developing the program with feedback from the student circles at the end of each module. It's like community is really at the heart of the Alef Trust learning journey, and that weaves its way through on all levels. So yeah, really delighted that we're joined by 2 of our alumni from the program, and Cynthia and AB, and Scott, who's currently in the second year. So really love to just hand over to the 3 of you to especially speak about your experience of the program and what it has led to. This is a question that we're often asked, and that prospective students are often asking, what can I do with this? What personal, professional, and academic development can happen? And whilst it's a question that everyone you'll each answer for yourselves in your own way if you join us, it's great to hear from people who've already been through the program. So hand over to the 3 of you, Cynthia, Avi, and Scott, if you'd like to introduce yourselves and then share a few words. Maybe Cynthia, you'd like to start?
Sure.
Get the ball rolling.
I'm happy to
Thank
begin.
you.
Hello, everyone. And thank you. It's really lovely to be back, and it's lovely to hear the staff and the faculty, and just I had this parade of all the experiences I had over the 3 years. So I graduated in well, technically in this past December, but finished in July. And I just want to say it's lovely hearing everything that's been spoken here, because it just reminds me about this quality I had. So in my situation back in the mid 80s, I had done a Master's of Arts in transpersonal psychotherapy at the California Institute of Integral Studies. I had studied there. And then that led to coaching and expressive arts and also social action. And that was kind of really my path, with a private practice and running workshops and courses and retreats over these last few decades. And then I came to a point where I was approaching 60, and I said, I feel like I need to bring more gravitas into my work. I want to understand and really develop the research side of things. And I want to bring more gravitas in my teachings, more depth, and more rigor. And I like that you use that word, Kendra, because that's a word that's been a real key word to me this whole MSc. So that's what was my motivation. I knew transpersonal has always been part of my life. I was fortunate when I was an undergrad to be exposed to it. Like so many of us that are on this path, we've had personal experiences that touch into the metaphysical, into the paranormal, into the spiritual, and that has been very much my life. And so in the quest to study these different subjects, it's allowed greater personal self-understanding, but it's created that inspiration to share it with others. And something that I have loved about this program is this combination of the rigor and the compassion and the understanding without losing the rigor at the same time. It's a fine line. And sometimes it's very delicate to have that. One thing, I will give an example of that. So when I was in the Approaches to Consciousness module, I hit on some real challenges, some real perfectionism, academic trauma around having to always do really well. And when I hit on the essay, all that came up. And I was met with compassion. It brings emotion now when I think back on it. And it's been a while now. It's been almost 4 years now. But I was met with so much compassion, not only from the staff and the different program leaders, and including also you have a personal tutor. He was super supportive, but there was also support from, I forgot her role, but what her role is specifically. She's not a counselor, but she's kind of like a coach, a wellness coach. And so then I also that was available to me. That meant, well-being support. Thank you, Kendra. And that was really exceptional. And it was a very vulnerable time for me as well. So personally, I had to really take some leaps in leaving behind outdated ways of approaching academia that couldn't work anymore. And yet I got support to do that. And then I followed up with further support beyond what was appropriate for this program, with also additional therapy and additional other experiential therapies to really go into this territory. So that was like quite a bang to begin with. Through the 3-year program, I had some also personal unexpected challenges, as often happens for so many of us when we do this program. The program intersects and meets us while we're in a particular phase of our life, whatever that phase is. And that was definitely the case with myself. And it was extraordinary. And then to have that container at the same time. And then lastly, what I would say is that in terms of how I've been applying it, so I had mentioned earlier that social action has always been part of my work in my life. What I loved was that there was this concept of applied transpersonal psychology, where you take the notions of these sometimes very abstract and heady concepts, some that very much, often include quantum physics, but bring it down in a way where you can then take it out into the world and apply it. And so it was this marriage of the rigor of all of this kind of these different studies, the intellectual concepts, but bring them in a way where you can apply them and bring them into the world. And that also is something I love about the program, is that you're given a lot of freedom of where you want to take this vast field. In fact, something that really impressed me in the very beginning when we were exposed to the research concept was that it was almost like a welcomed invitation. We need you. This field is young. This field, we're just beginning to, really scratch at the beginning of what this field really can offer. So we need your research. And of course, if this research is going to have value, the more you bring your heart and soul into it, and you study and you research and you write essays on what really impassions you and inspires you, the more you're going to bring service to the world. And I love that great invitation. It wasn't a dry academic exercise that was requested of us. And it had both. Yes, sometimes it was extremely challenging, no doubt. But and my group, and there was a group of us, Avi was one of those members, where we formed our own separate student group to support each other off hours, if you will, to hold support while we were navigating some of these academic challenges. But the holding container gave so much freedom. And then when I went on to do my dissertation and the research project, the last module, or the last, yeah, I guess you would say module, the last year, it was a marriage of everything. It was a marriage of all that I have pursued in my career up until this moment. And it's continuing now. And how is it continuing? So I'm writing it will go to publication hopefully by this end of this year, an academic article where I will take applied psychological concepts and bring it out to the world in an academic format. I already was doing a lot of public speaking, and my public speaking now, of course, after COVID, it became so much more online, has so much more gravitas, thanks to the rigor and the academic substance behind. And in anything I'm doing now, whether it's a client work, whether it's a retreat I'm leading, a workshop I'm leading, I bring in I infuse my teachings with so much more. And for me, it's now a matter of fact. It's a given because of the depth of which I dove in for the 3 years, where I'm seeing the way people light up. It's like they're hearing some of this for the first time. For example, a lot of us that do this kind of work, whether coaching or running a workshop, we always use some kind of music, new age music, or some kind of music that puts us into a more relaxed state of consciousness. I did a lot of work on some of my essays around this sense of entrainment and why that music does what it does, how it's brought in also into a shamanic context. So I could go on and on, but that was something huge. That was for me an opportunity to bring much more exploration to something I had been doing for decades of using these kinds of musics, and now having so much more understanding about why they do what they do to the participants in a workshop, for example. So as you can see, I'm quite passionate about all of this, and I think I've covered the main things I was inspired to share. And if anyone wants to prompt me with another question, I'm welcome. I'm sure I've gone way over time that would be appropriate. So thank you for listening.
Jacinta, that was wonderful. Thank you for everything you're sharing. And yes, if anyone in the room has any questions for Jacinta, or keep them for after we've heard from Avi and Scott, but do feel free to unmute or raise your hands and jump in at any moment, just for any questions on the bubble.
So why don't I jump in a little bit? As Cynthia described, a lot of the students come from backgrounds where they're doing some kind of helping work. They're counselors, they're mediums, they're, if you will, tuned into the spiritual side of things. That was not true for me. I was working as a tax attorney and had made the decision to not only change the focus of my career, but also to shift from working really, really hard to working in a more self-gentle, being gentle with myself kind of way. So I went into the program hoping for a transition in lifestyle, and also an internal transition, which is hard to describe. I want to say that I wanted to be a nicer person, in a very real sense. You can think of, or I think of Aleph as in this way. You can think of the world as having kind of two shades to it. There's this shade that's very discerning, a little bit hard-edged, and loves statistics and loves rationality, and is super effective at getting things done. And then there's another side that is more spiritual, more sees us as spiritual beings, expressions of the divine, if you will, as opposed to being economic units or being really good at what we do. That is softer, and we can fill that with, chanting and psychedelic drugs and psi phenomena. And what's interesting is that those two areas usually don't talk to each other and kind of hate each other. Even within the personality, they hate each other. So I wanted something that was walking the path between those, that was bridging those out in the world, but also within myself. I was feeling my own if you will, my own rationality kind of taking over, and the spiritual side wasn't getting its full due. At the same time, I was having these profound spiritual experiences, visions, and insights, and synchronicities, weird coincidences that I couldn't explain and wanted to understand. So I was also looking for a way to make sense of that experience in myself, as well as making sense of the world out there. So I explained all this in my application essay, and Les called me and said, you're really exactly the sort of person that we want here. So I said, great. So we did it, and it has been extremely fulfilling for me. I do see the changes in myself. I do feel very interested. By the way, for me, the consciousness course was the one that I expected to be the most dry and least relevant, and it turned out to be the one that was most exciting and most interesting to me. And because I didn't realize it at the time, but the way you think about what your conscious experience is and how that comes to be is foundational to everything else. It's foundational to how you think about God. It's foundational to how you think about the interaction between yourself and other people. It's foundational to how you think about your interaction with animals and the physical world and the environment. It all presumes a way of looking at what consciousness is, and I pretty soon had the sense that most of my friends and colleagues weren't quite getting it, and and as I got smarter about how to think about that, I began to have more. I less took for granted the popular view of things. So I guess that's the main thing I want to say. I did find a really strong sense of community, as Cynthia alluded to. That was super important to me. The best thing about Alef was touching base and working with my fellow students. It was also the hardest thing about going to Alef, was touching base with my fellow students. Some of them were really difficult and brought up a lot of angst for me, and working on projects together was sometimes challenging. And watching myself work through that, watching us work through that, was certainly part of the growth experience. We can presume that, I would now presume that we are fundamentally spiritual beings. We are fundamentally on a spiritual path. And it was very validating to be with a group of people that generally validated that, which was, again, in contrast to the way I had self-selected into the environment I had been working in before, was just not getting any support for that. So it's been wonderful for me. It's not of any superior practical value in the sense that I don't think I'm more saleable in the job market for having this degree. Maybe a little bit. It's nice having a master's degree, and there are certainly areas in research or in the cutting edge of psychedelics where this degree is exactly on point. But by and large, this is for one's personal and spiritual development. Thanks.
Thank you, Evie. Really good to hear your experiences, and good to hear that it was for your personal and spiritual development. Other people may have other experiences. So, yeah. And Scott, would you like to share just a little about your experience of the course as you're currently immersed in it now?
Jessica, thanks everyone. It's great to be here as always. So I think I'll break this down to 3 parts in terms of what drew me to the course, my experience of the program overall, and my interaction with the other tutors and students, and my experience on the specific modules that we've discussed so far. So what drew me to the course? It was very interesting. I remember I was on a particular trajectory going down a more physical, more therapeutic end in terms of working with the body and osteopathy and physiology and through my yoga studies. And I remember I was in the Blue Mountains in Sydney. I don't know if anyone's been to that part of the world, really nice part of the world. And my father asked me, so what are people really interested in, Scott? I said, mindfulness. Oh. And then immediately I researched, I became interested in this topic called spiritual psychology, the merger of spirituality and psychology. And that seemed like a really interesting mix to become to study or to look into. And then I realized it was part of the MSc module. So I plucked that away. I thought I'll do my MSc after my osteopathy degree, and quite ambitious. And then actually at that point, then I switched gears and I decided to do the MSc, and there was no resistance. It was this beautiful surrounding where I was inspired to study consciousness. And that same feeling when I went back to Sydney with the Baha'i temple, which represents the unity of all religions and traditions, at least. And that's had that same feeling of this is something, an inspirational course to pursue. So I applied, and my application was gratefully accepted. So I began my path with Alef. And so it's been a really interesting journey so far. What I can say is that I'd like to thank Kendra, Bethany, and Ellis for all your support, both personally, and I'm part of the tutor group, part of the student body, I'm afraid. I'm a rep. And so I can say that the support that you'll give to us is really gratefully received. I think just hearing hearsay what other universities and master's programs may be like, I think they're a bit more hands-off. And I can say with hand over heart that the Alef approach is very hands-on and very supportive, not just from an academic perspective, but also from well-being, and also being very compassionate to the needs of their students. So that's gratefully received. So thank you. And in terms of the modules themselves, so learning through integrated practices, this has probably been my favorite module so far. I remember I was reading on the first papers by one of the leading professors, and came across this idea called cognicentrism. And I thought that's such a beautiful word, and it summed up so much about the world today, how we all just live in the world of reason and logic, and explains so much about the way the world is to some extent. And then there's this other whole ways of looking at the world and knowing. And I thought this was so interesting. And then to then create a practice plan around these different ways of knowing, different ways of relating to ourselves. And I have a background in yoga and mindfulness, and so I wasn't allowed to do practices relating to those topics. So I had this inclination to do 5 rhythms for the somatic, the body. And what a journey that has been on. I mean, my first ever 5 rhythm, which is a form of conscious dance, I guess you'd had described as a mystical experience. You know, it was like, oh my God, I'm on a master's, and here I am having a moment of just complete ecstasy, or complete sense of like bliss and love and joy and white lights and so forth. And what's this all about? And here I am on an academic program studying this stuff. And through that whole journey, you know, it was so interesting to learn about myself through the body and through movement and the truths that came up and so forth. And being, as Ella said, in terms of being the researcher of your own experience and documenting that and then writing about it. And then it really brought out my skills in reflective writing, which comes out today. I really value that skill set, and I bring that to my writing today. I like to write. So I really value that module about learning all those different aspects of myself, and not just the somatic, of course, but the other modules, other domains, as Ella said, has been really valuable. And then approaches to consciousness. When I first opened the module, it was like, oh my God, this seems a little bit, as Bethany said, overwhelming to some extent, but actually it wasn't by the end. I really enjoyed, I think the first block about the beliefs and data was a really nice, gentle way of introducing the topic. And then your worldview gets turned on its head. It's like this consciousness idea about, oh, it's something to do with the brain and the body and so forth. It's like, no, it's consciousness out there. We're living in consciousness as a particular way of approaching the world. And it was, I think for myself and a lot of students, this was very transformational and just really eye-opening to think about the world in different ways. And as Avi said, you know, it really supports everything now. The way you look at the world, the way you relate to others, the way you relate to animals, and so forth. You start thinking about the world in a very different way. You can't help not be, really, to some extent. You've seen the other side, all these views on the other side. Why would you go back? And so for me, it's been very enriching. And the neuroscience I really enjoyed, but as Bethany said, it's not something for which you're assessed intimately against. It's knowledge which is important to have, yet there's a transpersonal component to which you present on and write about. So really just a really great overall experience so far. And also just to give credit to Bethany, she was the tutor in my group. I gave my first essay and I actually got some really great feedback about how I could improve my essay. And then I got my first distinction in my second year. So really pleased to be inspired by the tutor group to improve my writing and my academic skills. So, and then in my second year, I guess I'll talk a little bit about that, what's going on for me now. You know, it's really the second year, I think, is more about choosing the direction you want to follow, and then sort of coming up with ideas about where you want to present on, or topics you want to present on, write about, research, and then now creating a project plan on in terms of an area which is more applied, transformative psychology. So for me, working in finance right now, I'm looking at ways in which I can bring transpersonal approaches to solve issues within the financial industry, which could end up being the form of something which I'll do later in my career in terms of maybe running retreats, programs, and so forth, writing. So really, it's something which I entered with a sense of openness and curiosity. It's challenged me in many ways. It's made me look at my yoga practice, my mindfulness practice in a very different way. And I'm really grateful for that, although, that's sometimes, what you bring to class is obviously a different matter, but I'm sure as others know, but it's broadened me out. And as one student said to me on a retreat I just attended, said, the fact that you know about consciousness gives you so much more credibility as a teacher, I think, more authority, more something which you can talk to, which not many other students or teachers have that sort of knowledge. And also taking me out of the mainstream dogma of some of these traditions and say, listen, guys, it's much broader than this. There are approaches, and that provides a more balanced overall approach to your teaching. So for me, I'm really grateful for my experience so far with Alef. It's been very supportive, and I'm really looking forward to finishing the second year and on to my third.
Thank you, Scott. Really good to hear about your journey as well. And back to Kendra.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, everybody. I think I just want to pick up on one thread, and then I think we should open it up for questions from those of you who are here and interested in the program. I think one of the pieces that Scott just mentioned around bridge building between, and I know that Bethany and Ellis also spoke to it, Cynthia and Avi, you also did too, in different ways. But I think it's a really important piece. I think that we do within the MSc is I think there are multiple different bridges that we build over the course of the 3 years. And of course, what students also bring in, because as you've heard, Cynthia, Avi, and Scott all come from varying backgrounds. We don't require that you have a bachelor's in psychology or any degree in psychology in order to enter the MSc. So we have students from all different backgrounds. We've had students with bachelor's degrees, with master's degrees, and even PhD degrees, JD, lawyer, judicial degrees come into our program. So from various different backgrounds. And one of the things that I think that we do within our program, and I think there's various different ways in which this happens. One is by the large transformative education module that we operate within, but then within each of the modules where we're focusing on a very focused aspect of consciousness, spirituality, or transpersonal psychology, is that we're building bridges between mainstream languaging and knowledge and what we're doing within these fields of consciousness, spirituality, and transpersonal psychology. We're building that bridge between the personal and the theoretical, which gives that more sort of vertical embodied sense and understanding of the material. So when you're speaking about, when you're writing about, when you're engaging in conversations related to these topics, it's coming from a deeper place of knowing. It's not just from this conceptual, oh, I heard this once and now I'm repeating it. It's from an embodied place of understanding. And then we're building bridges between the theory and the applied, transpersonal psychology as a field has been around for well over 50 years. And at the beginning was so focused on theory because that's what was needed. There wasn't a lot of content theory built on these topics. And now as a field, it's really looking at how can we take all this theory that's been built and apply it into the world. What is the application that will have real social, global community effects in the world that can create ripples of social change and interactional change, relational change in the world. So that applied bridge from the theory out into the world. And I heard each of you kind of speak to that in various different ways. So I just wanted to highlight the bridges aspect of our education that I thought was being spoken to today.
If I can just follow up on that, Kendra, that's absolutely right. But I want to add that Alef's the only one who's doing that. There really isn't any other institution or school that is really trying to pull both edges together with balance and with respect for each other in the way that the Alef Trust is.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I could very much say the same. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, I think it would be a wonderful time to open it up for some questions. So I'll hand it over to Nick to help manage this next part of our time together today.
Yeah, welcome, everyone. Feel free to raise your hands or put your questions or comments into the chat, whichever way you feel comfortable, and we'll be happy to answer it. Okay, Gwendolyn. We generally suggest that a student allot at least 15 to 19 hours per week on their studies. It does vary from week to week, depending on assignments, reading, etc. Also want to say, do keep in mind that we're on the traditional semester system, just to be clear, because there are some online programs that go 52 weeks a year. So you do have breaks in between. It becomes manageable. We have had people who've had families, juggling job, career, etc. It is doable. In fact, you know, you've been hearing about the curriculum, especially through learning through negative practice. There is also the experiential that can help you as you're balancing your work and life. Your second question about going on PhD, it's usually we get about 3 or 4 students per year in the end. And I have to say, knowing all the applicants to after you graduate for all these years, it's always a surprise in the end, the ones who ended up going on the PhD. More often than not, if you were to ask that individual when they started the program, that was the last thing on their mind. And that shows you the value of the course because something comes out of each one of you. And you have this path of self-discovery. You start working on a research project and you get hungry for more. Bethany, please come on in.
Yeah, no, thanks, Nick. I just raised my hand here because one of my other roles with Alef Trust is I'm the assistant director of the PhD program. So I'll just briefly say that our PhD program is much smaller than the MSc, and that's for many different reasons. One of them is that it's a much more intensive process. It's a 4 to 7 year degree, depending on whether you're full-time or part-time, and you work with a specific supervision team. So I don't have a percentage of how many people apply from the MSc. When I saw that question come up, I just went into one of my documents, and right now we have 19 PhD students, and I think 8 of them are Alef Trust alumni. So I don't know exactly what that percentage is, but so we do take on people from Alef Trust. But what I will say is that applicants from Alef Trust aren't given preferential treatment in the selection process. So everyone's kind of treated the same. We look at all the applications, and then we make what's the word? We make offers accordingly. So yeah, so it just kind of depends. But as Nick said, some students do go on to do the PhD and are quite surprised. They didn't think they were going to want to do a PhD, and then they do. So yeah, it's an interesting and transformational process.
It
Can I?
truly is. I've watched over the years, some people, like their eyes light up and they never thought they'd get into research. And they're like, I want to know more. And it's really, that's a fun part as an educator when you just see that expression in their eyes. Thanks, Bethany. Sam
Yeah,
asked
Nick.
about,
Oh,
oh, I'm
Nick,
sorry,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to, yeah, I just want to follow up on the first question a little bit too around the weekly expectations for time requirements, because I think it's helpful to note that all of our webinars are taught live. Um, and all of our webinars are recorded. So as part of because of, we recognize that everybody's coming in with different schedules. We have students from all over the world. Our faculty are also from all over the world. So we're teaching during different time frames of the day. Although we're technically based in the UK, we do work with UK time. Everything is, listed in UK time. But there's no requirement to attend webinars live, even though they are offered live. There's only a couple of elements of our program, such as the reflective sessions that Ellis was speaking to, that require live attendance. But we take a survey at the beginning of the year, make sure we match you up with a supervisor that matches your time availability so that you can attend those live. So there are aspects of the program where you can really work around your schedule. We don't have this, requirement to be in attendance to the webinars. And just since I have myself unmuted, Nick, can I speak to the well-being
Yeah, go
question
ahead. I
as
was going
well?
to,
Just easy. Um, well-being is a element of support that's offered to any and every student. It's something that uh, Cheryl, who runs the well-being support, she runs webinars throughout the year, and she also has one-on-one sessions available each academic year for all of the students. That's at no cost. It's just as part of being an MSc student. So we do really take care of, making sure that you have that support available. And if you need any sort of accommodation, if there's some sort of learning assessment where you have some sort of documented like ADHD or something like that, that we do have a specific process that you would go through an assessment with our well-being support, and then a support plan would be put in place, which then has various different accommodations. So most certainly, if those are some questions that you have, make sure that you reach out to Nick, and he can also provide more specific information to your case if there's something that you have an inquiry about in that regard.
yes, just to follow up on that, yes, definitely, just please contact me. I I am fully available to work with each one of you through the application process. And sometimes there's something of a personal issue, one that deals with disability, and to maintain privacy, just connect with me and I can get the answer or pass on to you the level of support that we can give to you. Okay, thanks, Kendra. Sam asked, when is the application deadline? We prefer that you have your application submitted before the end of June. This permits enough time to do the formal review. And also, you could be submitting your application, but usually it takes a couple weeks for us to receive your reference letters. So your application is not fully complete until we get both letters. And that's your responsibility to contact your referees. Uh, if I don't hear back, I will, contact you and remind you. Or sometimes if your referees on break or something happens, we'll try to find a third option. Um, Notwithstanding that, we can take applications into the first part of August. Also know that it's not an open-ended enrollment. We take a fixed number of students in every year. We look to make sure that we maintain our high quality standards. So it's not like, oh, one more throw in, one more throw in that way. And a lot of effort does go in from our staff in the review of the applications. Nothing's done lightly or quickly. Yeah, a lot of time and energy is going into that. So also honor that from within yourself and get the application early. And as I said, I'm here to work with you. You want more information, if you want to connect with one of our students or alumni, I can get that arranged for you. Let's see. Okay, I hope I'm saying your name right, Make, about the 2 recommendation letters. Your situation happens very frequently. More than half of our applicants, it's been a while since they've attended university. So in those instances, when you cannot locate an academic reference, your next level, someone you know within your work circle who comes from a professional background, who can speak of your talents, your interest in the field, and to your stick-to-itiveness to complete projects. That's an important component in any master's program, not just ours, that you're passionate about the topic and you want to, know it's in our program, it's more than just knowing more, it's more than book learning, that you really want to discover something from within yourself. You can also contact me separately. Sometimes to throw out ideas, I know this person or that person, and I'll be happy to work with you or anybody else on finding who are the best possibilities for reference letters. So thank you. Okay, I see. Well, I think we got it all. Is there anything else anybody would like to ask or comment about? I know there was a lot spoken about today. Um, I'd also like to invite you in 2 weeks. I hold an application workshop that is not recorded. It's much more laid back, conversational, when you can bring a number of your questions or concerns about the application itself. Usually most people in attendance, they're already working on the application and we can go into more detail. And the next one is scheduled for Tuesday, May 13 at 7 o'clock London time. And you could sign up the same page you signed up for this session. In that workshop page that's tied to the MSc page, just scroll down and you will see it. Just keep in mind, it will not be recorded. So if you don't attend, you will not get a recording afterwards, as if someone signs up here. And if you can't make it, that's okay. Again, please contact me. I'm happy to make an appointment with you. I talk to a number of the applicants, very frequently WhatsApp or Zoom, and we just work out a convenient time. Oh, thanks, Fran, for putting my email address there. So yeah, please reach out. Otherwise, I want to thank all of you for taking the time today to attend. We always appreciate it on behalf of the staff, students, and alumni who were in attendance today, and also thanking everyone on our team who came today, and especially our students and alumni. Thank you for sharing your experiences on the course. You're the ones who make it come alive. It's not just us speaking dryly about the program. So thank you everyone again. I hope to hear from a number of you during the application process. So thank you, good day and good night.